Y'all, Weapons had my jaw on the movie theater floor. I think you're gonna love it, so let's talk about it. Hello, Civil Squad. Welcome back to A Spice, A Spice, A Dice movie reviews. Now, what we're gonna be doing today is we're gonna be doing a non-spoiler and spoiler review discussion of the movie Weapons. What I will do is I'll do the non-spoiler version very quickly in the very top of the video, the first thing. I'll make it very obvious when we move into the spoiler section. I'll count to 3, and then at that point on, all bets are off, right? You will have been warned, the whole 9 yards. So let's talk about that spoiler-free review. So Weapons is a relatively new movie. It's 2025, very recently came out. It's directed by Zach Cregger. Now, this has been a very talked about horror mystery movie or whatever, with good reason. This movie to me reminds me of the Barbarian, that kind of a vibe or whatever. There's suspense, there's horror, there's unexpected humor, there's all sorts of stuff that go into it. Now, there's an overwhelming sense of dread in this movie, okay? A very chilling atmosphere and also very heavy psychological tension. This movie really does combine all sorts of different things that are under the umbrella of the horror genre, but I would not consider it like a slasher kind of a film or whatever, right? This to me feels more like a thriller, a mystery, WTF are we watching? The story structure is very unique. Now, I'm not going to talk about it here because that was one of the surprises to me, but I'll just say it's definitely been done before, but it's been a while since I've seen it done. And for this particular story, it added to the sense of like what's going on, what's taking place, how is this happening, and then as a lens focused in on the way the story is being told, it allowed us, the viewer, to start to put the pieces together, and it really made it engaging. Now, the characters and the performances are all very good. The characters are typically, I would say, very memorable, and the actors and actresses playing them are very good. They're all, and I know this is going to sound weird, but it's almost like the characters, a lot of them are characters, if that makes sense. Just very unique, kind of like, huh? Like what? They're memorable people, which is oftentimes rare. One thing about this movie also is the way that they do tell the story. It allows each of the characters to feel like main characters, which is another reason why you become more invested in them and why each of them feels like character actors playing characters. Now, the atmosphere, the cinematography is amazing, right? It's just wonderful. They're using very clever uses of daylight, darkness to add to the story. This is one of those movies where very few details were left unturned in the storytelling narrative and aspect of it, all the way from visual to audio to just the whole movie itself. Now, another huge part of this is the unpredictability of the storytelling, okay? Literally, as you're going through, you're just like, huh? We're doing this now? We're doing that? There's surprises at every turn that literally just make you say, it keeps you going, right? It keeps you hooked into the movie. So I'll say this, of all the good things I've said about this movie, I definitely think you're gonna love it. I definitely think it's worth seeing. It's very unique, it's very interesting. Again, very much like Barbarian, that movie. If you saw that and liked that, and that kind of vibe of like, how did we end up here? This is literally that. I will say that this movie, at a certain point in it, I was like, where are we going with this, right? Even though I was hooked into it and I was invested, I was just like, okay, so what are we doing now? Because one way I would describe it is this. When you're looking at storytelling, you start off way back here, right, where the lens is this big. Okay, let me get in my lens. The lens is this big, and it starts going smaller and smaller to get down to like the point, the thing that, oh my goodness, well, here we are, right? This movie, I felt like stayed out here for quite some time, where I was like, what's going on? Okay, like here, where are we at? And then as it focused in more, it was like, oh, okay. So again, this is one of those films where this isn't like a, say Final Destination, where you can kind of put it on, it's going in the background, the formula, this. This does not have that. You're paying attention, you're watching it, but also you want to be. So yeah, 10 out of 10, watch it again. It gets a slice by slice, it gets all of those things. Okay, now, that being said, let's move into the spoiler section and just talk very freely about it. So if you do not want to know anything about this movie or have major plot points and components of the movie told to you, you need to click off this video now. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. 3. Okay, we're now in the spoiler zone. We're just going to talk freely. Okay, so weapons. First of all, the story, right? What's going on? Okay, so there's this town, 17 kids go missing from this classroom. The teacher and one boy in the room are the only ones left. So the whole town's like, oh my God, she's totally guilty. What happened? And you're seeing her go to these, class meetings in the town and whatnot and being like, where, what happened? She has to know, like, what's up, right? Well, this teacher to me seems like one of those teachers. And again, as her character focuses in more, it's like the cool teacher, if you will. So the kids, miss the bus, she takes you home. That this happens, she does this, right? She's one of those type people. Now, that proves to be a both good and strong point for her, okay? But the town turns against her because they literally all think that, she had something to do with these missing kids. So she is very convinced, like, what's up with this one little boy who was the only person not missing in the room? And she's wanted to talk to him. Well, obviously the school's like, girl, you need to go home and like chill, okay? Well, when she's at home, people are like banging on her door, doing crazy stuff and all this type of stuff, right? So long story short, she eventually follows this kid, goes to his house, and sees some really weird stuff going on, okay? Like there's newspapers on the windows, like weird stuff. So she starts putting things together. Okay, now let's stop there for a second. The way that the story is told is that you're seeing an event happens and then you see it played out through every character in the event that you run into, okay? So you start off from her perspective and then it stops and it puts you in one of like the father's perspective and you see where their paths cross. There's a movie that came out many years ago, Tom Cruise, and it was the same type thing. It reminded me of that type situation. So you as the viewer are sitting here piecing this together like, okay, so this happened, but then the dad who hated her at the teacher conference thing is now seeing this, but then, the principal's running up and like something's clearly like he's a zombie, right? And so as I was watching it, now remember, if you saw the previews, you would have seen like zombie looking stuff and you're like, what is going on here? So that's where in my mind with the preview, I'm like, when do we get to this? Well, when the preview thing happened and that dude comes running, the principal with the eyes bugged, and he attacks her, the main character, the teacher, you're just like, what is going on? And this is the mystery of how they tell these stories. And then they're like, oh, you want to know what's going on? Well, let's go over to his story and we're going to show you what happens. So at the heart of this is the little boy. Okay, now major spoiler alert. So the little boy in the classroom is part of the thing that's going on, okay? And I guessed that pretty early. I was watching it with Matt, and I was like, it's the little boy, it's the little boy. Well, not technically it was a little boy, but it was somebody in his house. Okay, so, what's happening here is this little boy, when you see his story, he has a mom and dad, very normal life. But you're hearing them talk about this aunt that's coming, this aunt that's coming, this aunt that's coming. Well, she is some kind of mythological creature, a witch. I don't know what she is, okay? But she's an accumulation of everything. So clearly she comes to stay with them and she's some kind of a parasite, right? She is sucking the life out of the parents. She puts them into this spell and basically just has them like zombies, okay? And she's making the kid go to school and she's sucking this energy out of the parents to try and make herself better. Now, this is my interpretation. You might have your own, so please drop it in the comments because I'm curious. So she's doing that, the kid's going to school, and she's like, you need to stop and get soup for your parents. I mean, obviously she doesn't give two what's about this kid, right? And she's like, you need to stop and do this and blah, 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 blah. And she scares the kid because she can make people do things. So like when he gives her a little bit of back talk, she makes the parents stab themselves in the face with a fork. And she's like, do you want it to stop? You're going to listen to me type thing. So when she doesn't get better, she's like, well, you know what? One little thing would help. Maybe you could bring some friends home from school. And so then you see how she does this, whatever sorcery she does, that causes all the kids to run into their house in the basement. So that's where the kids are. Well, anyone that, crosses paths, I'm going to put my little thing right there, that crosses paths, she does this, spell on them, right? And she makes them turn into kind of like a zombie that she can control and have attack other people. So then this tells you like, oh, the principal clearly was under her spell. And you see her go to the principal's house. She's trying to make sure that nothing happens with this kid at school to get them in trouble to where like authorities or whoever will be onto her little thing at the house, right? So that whole bit takes place there. Now, let's just kind of jump towards, the end or whatever. Okay, so as this is progressing and you're putting the pieces together of, the kids are in the basement, how are we going to get them rescued? It doesn't matter what takes place. She seems to be able to control everybody. Now, also another thing you're seeing, one storyline, is this cop, okay? And I think we need to talk about him because I think that he is also representative of this underlying theme and themes with this whole movie. This movie, to me, and I don't know the right even proper word for it, and it's leaving me right now, but where symbolic. The storylines, the things going on are very symbolic. You could compare it to political stuff. You could compare it to religious beliefs. You could interpret this in many different ways, right? But one of the more obvious things is this cop who's super obviously corrupt. And you're kind of seeing behind people's masks, and this cop in this movie where, he punches this dude who, you see that dude's perspective of it, but basically this junkie who lies and the cop reaches in his pocket and he has a needle and he pokes himself and the cop punches him and then remembers, I'm on camera. Well, the cop is also engaged to his boss's daughter. So you see that whole thing playing out and you're just seeing this good old boy system, but coming to bite him in the butt and melt down. Now the cop will end up getting turned into a zombie as well eventually, but he's just one example. If you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about, where you see behind the masks that everybody wears. So the school teacher in the beginning, even though she had nothing to do with these kids, she's going home, she's drinking, she has a drinking problem, she meets the cop. They had apparently been, effing at some point in life. She has him come over, she convinces him to get drunk. Oh, apparently you find out he's in AA. So you're seeing all these things about people and how they operate behind the scenes, okay? And some of it's good and some of it's not good, right? It's human, right? It's very human in that way, and I think this movie speaks to the way that everyday situations are nightmarish in and of themselves, right? And also it speaks to the parasitical, and I don't know if that's the right word to say, but what I'm trying to say is how human beings can be parasites themselves of one another, okay? And this creature, this ant, this thing, this whatever, is the mothership of that. She's very bizarre looking, she's very weird, she's unsettling looking, she has a strange energy, and obviously she's very lethal. And so the end where she is eventually eaten and literally, not figuratively, torn to pieces by these kids, by everyone, to me was just very symbolic of, chopping your nose off to spite your face, all the things with that, okay? So, saying all that, this is again another horror movie that you're watching it, and again, I'll compare it to, it's so much like Barbarian, where you're just what are we watching? How did we get here? Really, are we here now? These kids are running through the town, destroying the houses, chasing her. Oh, we're ripping her jaw off. Okay, that kind of a thing, right? You're just what? And there's not really a happy ending in it, okay? Now I'm gonna major spoiler alert here too. You find out that the parents were never the same. Some of the kids are one of them just started walking again. So there's not a happy, the happy ending is that they found everybody, but life didn't just go on, right? There was many victims in this. Also in this, it's not rare, or I shouldn't say that, it's rare that you see kids as victims in even horror movies. And even though you weren't seeing hardcore stuff like that in this one, the life didn't just go on and was happy after that, wasn't present is what I'm getting at, okay? I loved it. It was bizarre. It was wild. And it was one of those where I was done with it, I was what kind of a roller coaster we just go on? And I love movies that make me do that. Yes, I still love the slashers, the Final Destinations that you can kind of dial out. But these kind of horror movies, I think that's why horror films have continued to do so well, through the pandemic. And now, when people want a reason, an event, an experience to go to the movie theaters over, I feel like horror movies have been continuing to perform because they've really raised the bar in what they're doing. So that is it. 10 out of 10, I recommend. I am very curious what you think about it. Now just remember down in the comment section, kind of do a little spoiler alert type thing. If you're going to leave a comment, just not to spoiler it for everybody or whatever. So that's it. Let me know what you think down in the comment sections. And until we gather around the old proverbial television and movie screen, I'll see y'all soon.